ladies and gentlemen, Barstool Backstage, and on the guest list this week, one of our favorite songwriters in the world. He has a new EP coming out. He's going back out on tour, and he was fucking late to the podcast. Ruston Kelly in the building. What's up, baby?
What up, dude? Sorry, it's raining so hard.
Yo,
Yeah.
this is funny because like before we started, Johnny and me were talking, and I was like, I feel like I consume so much of this guy's music and his content that I'm almost at the vibe where it's like I awkwardly almost am gonna talk to this guy like I know him and I don't. And I think that was just a really nice interpretation of me being like, yo, what the fuck is up, dude? Oh
Yeah,
man.
dude. What's
Dude,
up? What are you guys doing?
where I'm sitting here, what were we doing? We were playing with Johnny's really into fucking AI voiceovers right now. And he's got all of our voices from the podcast synthesized, and we were making Kenny, who is one of our co-hosts, speak Chinese. So yeah, we're fucking not doing anything. Oh man, no, we're
Just preparing for the end of the world, basically.
that's basically what we
All
were talking
right.
about. We were talking about that and the fact that we can't listen to any more new music because there's too much new music, and it gives me anxiety to go on Spotify because I don't know what the fuck is going on. Do you suffer from the same issue?
I mean, yeah, I do actually. I have a lot of like younger friends of mine, like that are kind of in like the alternative sphere, like Annie DeRusso and Samia and like Annie and Eden, who's like been working with her a lot and has been on the road with her. They'll send me playlists of like music that I've never fucking heard of
Yep.
ever,
Mhm.
and will turn me on to like bands and music that like I really dig. So it's like coming from like someone that knows me that has like a sense of curation behind it, opposed to just like I just feel like I'm assaulted with new music in every single on every single platform on
Yep.
Really?
social media all the time. And every once in a while I'll find someone, I'll be like, damn, that really just like shook me to the point where I need to go and download their music. But it definitely seems like we're dealing with a quantity over quality situation.
Dude,
And because everyone can perform and record themselves and put it out online now, you know?
it's funny because the whole point of this podcast when it started was musicians getting together and being like, fuck the system. We don't care about the system. Let everybody in. Like, let's, independent artists for sure. And then now it's been like 3 years we've been doing this. And I'm like, did we open the floodgates a little too far now? Because like it's like the old guard was like there was curation and there was like quality control, and now it's
Yeah.
like all right, there's 145,000 songs a day on Spotify. I don't know. We might have overdone it. I don't know. That's where we are right now. This is the existential crisis of Barstool Backstage.
Well, it's crazy that you just said that number and it sounds like some kind of over exaggeration, like
Right.
hyperbole for a podcast. That's the actual number.
That's that's really insane.
It's horrifying.
You guys
Yeah,
should
But
check out my
it's
new song.
horrifying.
yeah, exactly. By the way,
Just
we're
like
dropping a new song on February 16th, in case anyone was
What?
wondering. And it's funny because the way I found you, and I'll kind of backtrack on this. Like,
Yeah.
I think I may have told you this through DM, but I'm in Philadelphia and I was driving listening to World Cafe on WXPN, and this was right when Dying Star was coming out, and you went on and you did an interview and you played Faceplant, which right away I was like, oh, this is fire. And then you
Oh
told the backstory of your like early years in Nashville. And I was like, this is the rawest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. And
yeah.
that's how I became a fan. Like, so,
Hell yeah.
I mean, we're going to get into that. And I'm sure you've covered that 8 million fucking times. But I actually wanted to start with the tour you have coming up. You're going to
Yeah.
be doing piano, acoustic, laid back, kind of like storytellers type of a situation.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the cover of like the announcement flyer for the tour.
Yeah.
Please explain what this is for people who aren't initiated.
uh I mean I've always kind of done shit like that where like I grew up listening to grunge and then like that transition into like punk and metal, and I listened to like pop punk, and there seems to always be, especially like with pop punk and emo, like there is this combination of having a tougher aesthetic than like what your music actually sounds like.
Yeah.
And I feel like I like extreme. I'm a person that's like I guess creatively I work in extremes. personally, my, you know, my mission is to be able to like live in the middle of my extremes, because they tend to get me into trouble. But I find like marrying to what seem to be polar opposite vibes, one being like very sensitive music, especially for like an acoustic tour, and then having an ad mat that is like incredibly vicious. I thought's hilarious. I think that's really fucking funny. So I mean, most of the stuff I do on social media and putting stuff out there like public facing is like, you know, there's a bit of a wink to it.
Yeah.
And also like the fact that like my bus did catch on fire on the last tour, like that's a real picture.
Yeah.
Uh
Oh,
and my
no shit.
drummer,
That's
my
what I was
drummer, because
alluding to.
dude, we had to rush off of the bus because it was catching on fire. And it was like at 6 a.m. or something. We were rolling down the highway. So we were all like half naked, no glasses, no contact, like no one could see. And my drummer, he's also a photographer in New York, and his instinct was to go and capture this, which is really great. So I'm looking over at my dude over there, and he's just like this. He's like this beautiful Korean man, and he's covered in the coolest tattoos you've ever seen, and he's wearing like these like boxer briefs, and he's on the other side of the highway taking a picture, taking photos of us walking away, and he didn't grab his camera, so it just was an iPhone picture. But that picture of me like holding my fist up, walking away as the bus burst into flames is a very real picture. And I was like, I have to use that somehow, you know?
Dude,
That is
that
the
is
most.
so cool. Like I thought I had a cool, we got rear-ended in a bus on like ice in Canada, but that was not as cool as walking away from an explosion.
Bro, there's
Dude,
nothing
it
cooler
literally,
than like Ramstein aesthetics, and then like
yes, yes,
a song like Anchors being gently played in the background. Yo, this is
yeah.
the shit, dude.
Yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. Because
Well,
like, I mean, those songs like they deal with very heavy subject matter most of the time. That's like where I write from. I write from this place of needing to express myself, to understand myself existentially. And I think like there's also a, you know, a valid point to not taking life so seriously. So it's like when I'm singing about stuff that is very serious, having it, whether it's an aesthetic or it's stage banter or whatever, I mean, that's just who I am as a person. I can kind of go from like making fart jokes to then, you know, going really into the depths of the spirit and the point of living. And yeah, imbuing that in my career aesthetically is
there,
it's been a fun thing.
there's something really interesting you said, kind of starting off this whole recent discussion. We just this kind of thrust about these two polar opposites, and in the middle, there's this humor that occurs between these two polar opposites. And I think that actually is, in many ways, the definition of humor is that a contradiction occurs
Yep.
in your brain, where
Yeah.
like the logical part of your brain cannot assume the two opposites at the same time. So you get this weird, just like it's your brain going like, "Bloop, I don't know what the fuck to do with this."
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's such a like funny, it's a funny thing, like literally, but it's also kind of one of the most profound things to observe about yourself, about life, is that usually we operate in one side of those poles. Like
Yep.
we're over here or we're over there, or we think we're, you know, God or we're the devil. And if you can step back from that and get that third perspective, you know, it's such a enlightening thing that happens, and it happens obviously so rarely.
Yeah, man. I feel
Man.
like that's the nail on the head for me. You kind of just summed it up. I think like essentially that type of realization, being able to laugh at something, especially when it's has caused so much suffering in your life, it instantly grants you power over that thing that once seemed to like have power over you.
Yeah, I mean
And
it's
humor is the outlet.
non-attachment basically in like real form, or the
Yeah.
practice
Yeah.
of non-attachment, you know.
And
Yeah,
once
pretty
again,
much.
as a big fan, like I will say, like songs like Blackout, which obviously are dark as fuck,
Yeah, it's
but
dark.
then there's a line in there where you say, and I argue LeBron with my friends, and I remember
Uh,
hearing that for the first time and being like, this guy gets it. Like there's an element of like, or even like Michael Keaton off the last album. I was trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
explain to Johnny and me, we're talking about, like, this sounds weird. We were talking about you and your songwriting before you came on. And I was like, to write something like, uh, if Michael Keaton killed himself in Multiplicity, would that be genocide? That's funny. Like, that's a good, like, and that's the hook of the song. Like, are you kidding me? There's certain songwriters that can twist something dark and sarcastic, and it's cool. Because if it's done wrong, it's corny. If it's done right, it's genius. So, like, that's to me where, like, I'm drawn to the way you write songs.
Are
Thanks,
there any
man.
on that front? Are there any artists that were you find particularly inspiring in that regard? Like for me, when I think of that type of lyric of the again the contradiction of something kind of ludicrous with a somber musical background, I think of Leonard Cohen because people think of him a lot of
Sure.
times as serious, but if you really dig into some of his lyrics, he's just like fucking hilarious in a weird, dark way.
Yeah, yeah. Leonard Cohen is one for sure. John Prine was, I would say,
Oh
probably
yeah.
the master at that. Like he bordered more on the funny side, but like there was such an emotional depth to like the punchline.
Hmm.
I mean, honestly, some of the beat literature, uh, like beat literature, Jack Kerouac,
Mm.
he wasn't really like overtly funny, but there was this sense of like the humor that I like is this almost sarcastic perspective that living is living and sometimes like life be lifing. You know what I mean? And like life
Yeah.
is it's just like, well, okay, like that's just what it is. And to
Have
make
you read
light of that, you know?
Have you read Herman Hesse like Steppenwolf?
I haven't read Hess. That's one of the guys that I haven't really dove into.
I would highly recommend it. It's one of those books I think that often gets kind of made fun of because it is one of those books that like everyone reads in their first year of college and like thinks they're enlightened. At the
Right, right,
same
right.
time, I think it actually might be one of the most profound books of all time. And he's got that thing where he's like this German or Austrian writer from the 30s and 40s, like super serious, and then like just weirdly funny. And again, I don't know, it's always humor somehow. I think in anything that has real truth to it, it can't not be partially funny or
Yeah,
ridiculous, you
dude.
know?
Well, that's great. I actually just finished a book. One of my favorite authors is, I would say, in the literature sphere, is the king of, you know, dark humor would be Kurt Vonnegut. And
Right.
I just finished Breakfast of Champions, which is nothing but dark humor and sarcastic humor and satire. But I was looking for a new book anyways. So
I can highly recommend it. Shoot us back and tell me whether I'm wrong.
all right, bet.
Do you pull, because you seem like an avid reader, do you pull a lot of inspiration from what you do read? Or I guess even on more of a note, where do you pull from? Because we're both songwriters. We're, you know, this is a
Yeah.
nerdy kind of songwriting podcast from time to time. This seems like it's going down that direction, but it's obviously real life experience. But what gets the juices flowing for you? Like, where do you get the jump off point from?
Hmm. It's different. If I'm in like a craft mindset, right? Like if I'm into like sharpening the blade mode, which I would say like there is a difference in the art of it and the craft of it. The
Hmm.
art of it doesn't really have a rhyme or reason for when it hits an
Yep.
individual in the way that it hits them, right? Like the song I released before this tour announced, Belly of the Beast,
Mhm.
was I was doing the dishes, you know, and like it just the chords, the words, the melody was all there. It was like the first verse and the chorus, and I ran to the piano because I like knew that it's like kind of pulling that thread out, and I had to follow it, otherwise it's going to dissipate. It happens like that very rarely, as you guys know. Any creative person, if you apply yourself consistently to that creative practice, not the craft of it necessarily, but kind of answering the muse's call, it you you start to shape the world and your perspective of the world towards that in a way, and you see things
Mhm.
from a very creative perspective. And so that will just naturally happen. But when it comes to like muscle work, you know, sitting down and being like, okay, I'm going to dedicate time to write. Do I feel like writing right now? I don't actually. And sometimes like it's a moot practice, but other times it's like after hour one or two, then like the kind of creative juices start flowing. and then I can start pulling from something. And that's when I feel like I go exteriorly and pull from something like, oh, I remember that passage that I read, or it was the language or the syntax that like
Yeah.
Vonnegut was using to convey a point. And not all of that is completely, you know, I'm not completely aware of that mode necessarily, but I've digested it, and then my brain will pull from it, you know?
There's an interesting idea that the act of creation or any kind of profound life experience requires no effort, and it cannot be
Mm.
achieved through effort, right? Like you're talking about the two sides of it. You can't force out the creative thing, but that's not to say that there's not effort involved. It's just that the
Right.
moment itself is no effort. Everything before that is the effort, like you're saying, the craft of it. You're reading, you're absorbing and digesting the world. You're working on the mechanics of how to write a song, you know, learning
Right.
about music and or writing. And then somehow mysteriously that disappears, the effort disappears, and then it's like I mean, I think the image of the muse is perhaps more literal than we give it credit. Like it is
Mm.
just this thing that appears, but
It
when
happens.
the circumstances are right.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I guess it depends on like what your intention is with your creativity. If it's to like have a better understanding of yourself, I mean, the muse takes many forms. The muse loves beer drinking songs.
Mm.
Like the muse loves Florida Georgia Line and Morgan Wallen. The muse also loves Jason Isbell. Like it's the way that it echoes to people and translates a feeling, whether that's like a feeling that sits here or a feeling that sits way down deep inside of you. But I would say that a lot of people of the same ilk of me that like when I have these conversations with, if they ask me like, okay, I have writer's block, like how do I get over it?
Mm.
A human child?
Yeah, he's here. He's been here the whole
Dude.
time.
Wait, congratulations. How old is this child?
This is 5 months. This is my boy Connor, which is funny because
Connor.
and this just completely derails the conversation, but
That's okay.
we got in trouble on YouTube like 2 episodes ago because we were having what I thought was a funny conversation, and he happened to have been sitting on my lap, and YouTube was like, "Yeah, you can't do that with a baby on your lap." And so I was like, "Guys, we're not gonna have Connor can't come on the videos anymore." And then my wife is she's in the office today, so he's crying sitting next to me, so I was like, he's got to get picked up.
You know what? The fucking internet police can just deal with it.
Goddamn right, dude. Goddamn
Don't
right.
say, can you
Man,
please not
that's
say
amazing.
internet police when the baby's on the screen? Because I think the AI triggers are going to grab that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry guys.
I do want to get deep for a moment here though, because
Yeah.
everything that we're talking about here, it's I've always been like the craft part never interests me. I'm very much like a
Yeah, it's
spur of the
boring.
moment inspirational songwriter. Like I need
Yeah.
to it needs to happen in a second or I don't like it. And then I spent time in Nashville and I went through CSAC and writers rounds and stuff like that, and it started to interest me more and more. And then it becomes kind of an exercise of like, oh, how can I get wittier? How can I do this? How can I make that work more?
Mm-hmm.
And it truly is work. Like once again, the podcast has brought us a lot of things, but like talking with Johnny and Kenny. Kenny's from the band AWOL Nation. They have that song "Sail" that was huge.
Right.
And having Kenny start to dissect some of my songs and chopping things up, and it's like, how does your brain work like that? But there is like a thing about the mechanical nature of the more regimented side that just gets under my skin, and it's why Nashville's always been such a challenge for me in a certain perspective. But like, it's hard for me to picture a world where Ruston Kelly isn't who you are today, and like once again, going back in your history, you wind up just becoming a Nashville songwriter and doing things like writing for Tim McGraw. Like, you know what I mean? Like, could you ever have imagined a world where you stayed in that lane and you were just co-writing and doing the pop country side of things?
I mean, I would have just died of alcohol abuse. It was not something, you know what I mean? Like it's I knew like it was almost like, I mean, to answer your question, no, I cannot imagine that because it was part of this plan. I had a plan. I knew that like the step one or step zero was to get my foot in the door.
Yep.
And so I got my foot in the door because I needed to pay my bills. And
Right.
you know, like working on a horse farm, working on a chicken farm, like doing landscaping was not cutting it.
Right.
So, you know, I just went and did the thing and was like really, 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 really like bottom of the barrel living. But at one point, like I did get my foot in the door and I found someone that believed in me. He was actually the dude that brought Ryan Adams to town. I know he can't say Ryan Adams' name anymore, but
I'll
his
stop you
music's
there.
fantastic.
I regard on this podcast you can, because we can separate the art from the artist. Like
Yeah.
Ryan Adams has 4 of my favorite albums of all time. Like I can't deny that.
Great music.
It is great music. Not a dude I want to have a beer with, but
Not at all.
I still listen to Gold. I can't lie.
Yeah, Gold is fantastic. Heartbreaker. I mean, everything he did with the Cardinals, that stuff was really monumental to a lot of people, and to pretend like it wasn't because of, you know, sins, I don't think is the way that like I want to digest art. Now, like I don't feel the need to like support someone in that, but that's a whole nother
Exactly.
thing. So
Agreed. 100%.
John Allen was head of BMG at the time when, and he discovered me. It was like a writer's round. I was doing the thing, you know, I was just like churning and burning. And he literally had taken Ryan Adams out of a bathroom stall while he was doing cocaine because he had the Heartbreaker session the next day. And he was like, dude, he had signed him. He was also the guy responsible for introducing Johnny Cash and Rick Rubin. And
what?
so this guy like immediately had my respect. And I went into his office. It was one of those big Nashville offices, you know,
Yep.
with trophies and shit and awards. And I played him this song I just written called 12th Avenue Breakdown that had no chorus. It was like 6 verses. And he was sitting there and he was like, damn. He goes, I'd love to hear more of that. And that was the first person that was like somewhat in the, you know, popular music machine that gave a fuck. But he was like, here's what I think that you should do. I'm going to sign you as a staff writer with like a sidecar of an artist deal. He's
Right.
like, but we're not going to get to that yet because you've kind of got to prove yourself a bit. And so I spent the next like 3 years writing day in, day out, songs that I didn't really want to write, songs that were only from muscle, songs that were only like sometimes they labored to write. There were a few that were not. And
Right.
the interesting thing is the ones that got cut were the ones that I really enjoyed writing. And what it did was it showed me like that there can be camaraderie in co-writing,
Yep.
but that also the things that I want to write for myself, like most of the time I really can only say it in the way that I want to say it. But it got me into rooms with some of the people that are like my closest friends. And also we're like, I mean, I went from like writing with everyone to then being in rooms with like Natalie Hemby and Hillary Lindsay and Lori
Genius.
McKenna, you know, and those people I respected so much. They had such an enlightened view about what they did. They were like, yeah, we write silly songs, but what we really want to do is write these songs. And they were the ones that eventually convinced me to just go for it and to make an album. And I didn't need to write with anyone for a while. And they ironically were the ones that convinced me to do that.
Bro, Natalie Hemby and Luke Dick are just a killer combo.
Luke is awesome.
Luke is a friend
There's
of the
so
podcast.
many good writers.
Yeah, Luke and Natalie doing stuff for Miranda Lambert is like,
oh yeah,
that's a perfect combo, dude. And you want to talk about people that can write outside themselves and be sarcastic and funny, but still drive home a point, dude.
Yeah,
Luke is the king of that.
Dude, he's also
Is this
very
something
much
that's
like that.
sorry, go ahead.
No, he's just like that in person. He's a funny fucking dude.
The first time he came on the podcast, he was sitting out back of a studio smoking like a corncob pipe. And I was like, what are we getting into here? Because when I work out in Nashville, my studio keys player is Spencer, who is in Hey Steve with Luke. And so like there's like a roundabout kind of a thing there. But Luke is like Bluebird, like obviously was a smash. Like there was no doubt about that. But then you go through what Luke does on his own, and then the entire like newer Miranda record, and then I like Luke too because he was like, if you think I had a lot to do with this, go check out Natalie Hemby. And then I dove into Natalie, and I was like, oh my god, dude.
Yeah.
I think the corncob pipe is a big part of it because I've been smoking some tobacco, just straight tobacco out of a corncob pipe. I sit outside, like on a porch outside my studio here, and there's nothing like nicotine and tobacco. And like, I know we're meant to hate tobacco and all that stuff now, but I don't know. We can hate big cigarette companies and also say that tobacco is a plant that grows on the earth and it's awesome in like if you don't become addicted to it. Like it's for writing. I'm talking about like specifically for writing. It's quite an
Oh yeah.
amazing
Oh yeah.
drug.
Yeah, that is that's one of the things I have not yet quite kicked. I quit smoking cigs, though I still will have one every once in a while because I want to.
Of course.
And yeah, it's a weird thing how nicotine has it's like it's a perfect side dish to being creative, you know?
You know what? You know what it is? It's like a momentary break without
Yeah.
taking a break. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like it's
totally.
like a mental reset to where it's like, okay, I've done that thing. It's time to smoke, and then it clears the mechanism, and then you move into the next thing. It's a
You know what? I actually heard Tony Robbins, of all people, talking about this and saying like what a big part of it for a lot of people, other than like the actual literal chemical addiction and things that nicotine does to your brain, is the fact that you stop for like 2 or 3 minutes and you breathe slowly, even though you're smoking, like you slow your breath down,
Oh yeah.
and and that changes. You know, like if you just did that without the cigarette, it would probably also do a lot of wonders for your writing. But like,
Right.
it's easier with a cigarette. I
yeah,
don't
but
even
it's
smoke,
cooler
but
if
I
you do.
get it. You
It's
know.
cooler if you do it with this. You know what I mean? Because plus you get the cool points and you look cool.
Yeah.
If you put on a leather jacket and maybe like a fucking white t-shirt, you're in there,
There
bro.
you go.
You got to hit
You're
record.
in.
It doesn't, but like I guess the whole thing is though, like I think about like an alternate universe where you're like you stayed in that realm of like working with Tim McGraw, and then eventually you went to Florida Georgia Line, and then right now we're interviewing you, and you have like an eyebrow ring and a Monster Energy drink and like bedazzled jeans, and you're talking about your pop country record that's coming out. I'd like to see that timeline.
Honestly, that alternate timeline kind of fucks, to be honest. It's
That's
pretty sick.
yes.
I'm into that, you know? I
Bro.
mean, I
Can we?
think it's like it's really whatever it is that's like it is the thing that you want to do. I mean, that is your calling, you know? Just like go do it. Like that's why I have always fucked with Florida Georgia Line. That's why I
Yep.
fuck with Morgan Wallen's music.
Me too.
These dudes are actually that. You know what I mean? Like they are that.
Yeah.
This is who they are. This is what they grew up around, and they're just expressing themselves in the same way that I'm doing it. It's just different. You know what I mean? Oh,
It's just crazy.
I have a hard time with artists of our current time of getting into that because I'm never sure whether to like I'm very cynical about it. But I do this exercise like if I went back 50 years and listened to George Jones
Yeah.
back then, would I be just as cynical? Because like now I love him. Like it, but at the time I might have been like, what is this dude on about? Like every song's like the same kind of comically crying sad song, and like I know it's a legit story with him, but you know what I mean, like I'm very
yeah.
cynical about like my time, and I romanticize the past. Maybe I need to like romanticize the present more, and I'd be more open to a lot of like current artists.
Well, it's so sick though that like all these dudes are like, and we say this a lot on this podcast, but like the entire pop country scene right now is like dipped in both like country, but then Drake, and then also Creed. Like there's this weird thing where it's
Yeah.
like it's all Creed coded.
Weird right
Like
now.
it's all Creed code. All the guitar tones are Creed. They're all Nickelback. It's all these
Yeah.
like overdriven Paul Reed Smiths, but they
I
talk about
mean,
trucks. It's awesome.
it's like when it comes to taste, this is like I'm not a huge fan of like Pitchfork, etc. I appreciate what they do. Because like it's good to have dialogue, but like sometimes it gets a little bit like, you know,
Oh yeah,
and
you
it's
want to give him a wedgie. Is basically it. You know what I
yeah, like
mean?
people like what people like. And like sure, if you want to go into like a uh like a snobby elitist view of the craft,
Right.
I'm also happy to have that conversation, but that's a different set of rules. Like you're not going to compare Morgan Wallen to Bob Dylan.
Nope.
Like they don't live in the same world. And I feel like I don't know. I think music snobbery is really stupid.
Yeah, I mean it's like comparing like a football player and a basketball player. They're playing different sports. They just happen to also play sports. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
no, that's a great comparison. Yeah.
but I think that's like why. Once again, we're talking about why this podcast got created. It's because fucking Pitchfork and Rolling Stone they lost the plot, man. I don't know what happened. It's weird.
Yeah. Well, there's also, it seems to be like whatever tends to be the most, I guess, popular, popularly aligned set of perspectives. Let's just put it away. Musicians that are kind of like of that ilk. Well, yeah, of course, like Rolling Stone is going to love them. You know what I mean? Like, of course, Pitchfork is going to love them, and that's great for them. But like, I don't think that Rolling Stone is still the authority that it once was on just, overall music. I've
Nope.
yet to see that being proven. And, to their benefit, like I think that social media has definitely impacted negatively critical journalism on all fronts.
Sure.
But to keep themselves afloat, I feel like a lot of these outlets have to rely on clickbait type stuff, and to also commend and support artists that seem to be very popular already.
Yeah.
I take the viewpoint that all that social media and current like algorithm based journalism and all that has done is remove the mask that was there already. I think news organizations have generally always been full of shit in the music. Like I think we thought it was better. Then it opened up to the world, opened up to like the savagery of AI generated news and AI generated like eyeball catching. And it's like, it's all just a crock of shit. Like, it's always been a crock of shit. We thought it was like respectable because it was Rolling Stone or the New York Times or whatever. I'm not like picking a political side, but like whatever it was. And it's just been taken away. And it's nice because now you can maybe start to have an opinion of your own and say, I like this because I like this or I don't.
That's why
Yeah.
Johnny only listens to Alex Jones and Newsmax. That's the only thing Johnny gets into, dude. He's just,
Only
real.
Alex Jones remixes with Drake.
Oh yeah, AI baby.
That's a
Oh.
niche.
You got that's the it's like it's niche core. You got to find your perfect like single person niche so that you're truly an individual.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean
I
that's
mean, we have that ability now, I mean, it's like pick your point. What's really crazy to me is algorithmically, we're under the impression that we're all getting the same news. And to a degree, yes, we are. A lot of the like explosive things that go viral, but like really, really viral. But dude, I'll go and like have, be like on TikTok and see something that what I think is viral, millions and millions of views and likes, etc., of some story that's happened. And I'll go and I'll tell my girlfriend, I'll be like, dude, did you hear what Cat Williams said? Wasn't that nuts? And she'll be like, what are you talking about? And she's on TikTok more than I am. You know what I
yep.
mean? Like,
Yeah, no, it's
I'm just
crazy.
like, I'm like, wait, what is this actually doing to us zoomed out as a culture when we're perceiving like our purview then becomes what we think is pretty much a main character storyline.
Oh yeah.
And you know what I mean? That's really nuts.
Yeah. Dude, I fall in these existential holes all the time. Like, what are we doing? Like, how did we get here?
I
Like,
know. And what that's really dangerous to like to put it back onto creativity. The I find that overuse of social media and this exaggerated perspective of the world based on my likes and tendencies that has been curated for me.
yeah,
The weird thing about it is that the overconsumption of that tends to breed like nihilism for me. It
yes.
tends to breed a sense of like, well, what does anything mean or matter? And that's a really scary thing because like that can translate as like a working artist. This is my line of work. This is my livelihood. This is how I pay my bills. And I sit down to just create sometimes, especially when it's the craft perspective, because it's vulnerable, because it's not just coming from that pure instant of needing to say it. I'll have these exterior thoughts that seem to come from what I have consumed on social media. And that's like an instant, like I have to ninja chop that away really fast because I am
Yep.
human. It's going to happen. But like you're going to end up just digging yourself further into a hole that way.
I
You
think
gotta
though
think.
nihilism is a good thing to use as a tool. It's
Hmm,
not an ends. Like a good amount of
Yeah.
nihilism can get you to a point where you realize that it's not just social media. Again, that's just like kind of this magnified version of what we are to begin with, which is just this endless external influences that make us do the things we do in an automatic, like mechanical way. And anything that helps you realize that you're mechanical and that you are not actually acting from inside yourself, from your real self, can be beneficial. Yeah, it's dangerous because you can fall into, like you're saying, a
Totally.
nihilistic hole where you start to believe that. But if you can step back just that like inch away from that and say, okay, I see myself as like this collection of like opinions that I don't actually believe in going on, then you can perhaps get to a better place from that. But you know, it is a treacherous
Absolutely.
journey.
Yeah, I mean, because the scary aspect is, maybe someone hasn't reached a level of emotional intelligence or self-awareness to see the big picture of themselves when they start creeping into those depressive spirals. And, I've been victim to that before. The irony of it is that that is actually how you grow. That's actually how you attain self-awareness. That's actually how you increase your emotional intelligence, is not having it and realizing you don't, you know?
Well, yeah,
I
you cannot change and bring everything you had with you. Like you know,
Right.
you
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
like
That's great. I love that.
people want to change and say, but I'm keeping this, I'm keeping that. It's like you can't. It's I think that the biblical idea of like it's harder for a man to pass, or the camel to pass through the eye of
The
a
eye
needle
of a
than a man
needle.
to enter the kingdom of heaven. Forget any religious questions on that. I don't know where you stand on that, and I don't know where I stand on that. But it is an incredibly profound thing to think about. That for you
Yeah.
to enter into the kingdom of heaven, insert whatever verbiage you need to hear so that you don't get offended because we're talking about religion, like to make that kind of a spiritual leap or a personal advancement, you have to become so tiny in terms of what you call yourself and this ego and all this attachment you have to yourself to pass through the eye of a needle. And I think as an analogy, it's just an amazing way to think about things. You cannot just keep all the stuff you're attached to and with you and expect to grow anywhere. And I say that, and like that's literally all that I do is like I am my hat, I am my opinions about Drake or whatever, like
Well, you're
Yeah.
human.
Yeah.
yeah, of course, of course.
Human.
It's a dichotomy and a paradox always, but you know,
I
Wonderfully
do
put, man.
I do find it interesting when people come on here and then they're like, "Oh, I'm doing Barstool Backstage." I assume this is going to be about like football and boobies, and then they come on and Johnny's like, "You ever think about death and existentialism?" And then they leave and they're like, "Wow, these guys actually can speak a coherent sentence. This is
I actually
nice."
have a side podcast. It's death, existentialism, and boobies.
I mean, you can love football and be a deep thinking motherfucker,
Goddamn right, dude. It's how I live my life. Uh, but no, man. I think the way I look at this is sorry, moving forward
Good.
with
It's through the
what,
eyes of a child.
yeah, moving forward with what you have going on with your career, right? And we'll get back to
Yeah.
that. Do you see yourself diving more into where you're heading on tour right now, where you're going to go more acoustic driven? Because I mean, the new record was fantastic, by the way, but a lot of it was built around more of like an acoustic songwriter's perspective as opposed to a full band thing like, I don't know, Mockingbird and things like that.
Mhm.
Do you see yourself diving more into the simpler part of what you do?
I don't know. Um, I think this tour it's something that I've always wanted to do. Like, you know, Springsteen's done it, Dave Matthews has done it. I've seen Jackson Brown and Dave do it, where this becomes another form and aspect of touring and a different way to like express some songs that aren't in the traditionally recorded ways. Now, as far as that will translate into the studio, if that's something that I want to carry into, I'm not sure yet. I do know that this past record was an experiment for me,
Hmm.
and something that a mode that I hope I always maintain, which is to experiment and to create a box and put myself outside of that box as often as I can until I create another one. And taking risks and taking like it's the first time that I had uh a lot of team members, right? Like there were a lot of hands on this record. And at first my gut instinct and my inclination is to be like, can we remove all these hands?
Yep.
And not from a creative standpoint, there weren't hands on it. But it was just like the first time it seems like we had built something and we were trying to take it somewhere. And so I was like in the middle of balancing, you know, what does it mean to grow a career and what does it mean to express yourself in a new way? So all this newness. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed that process. I enjoyed working with a new producer. It was really fun and enlightening. Nate is an incredible talent, and he played a lot of the instruments, which was new for me because typically it'd been just me and Jared Kay kind of had played everything.
Yeah.
So long way to answer your question is I don't know if it's going to be a simpler thing, but I can see the next record having uh kind of a return to like bread and butter for me, which would be like Dying Star. You know, like I miss my dad playing on the record and I miss having harmonica and stuff. And I'm glad that I left that for a second for one record just to see what I could do without it. And I'm sure I'll do that again. But
Right.
I'm really drawn to bringing it back down to like the roots of things for me for the next record.
I think it'd be nice as a fan just to see that return as well, because you get to
Yeah.
like I want to see multifaceted sides of an artist. You brought up someone like Springsteen, and Springsteen went through that like 80s, 90s period where he was using like
Yeah.
these big kind of shotgun snares, and then he went through
Yeah.
like the Tunnel of Love phase, and like I want to, and then eventually it gets back to like Wrecking Ball, The
Yep.
Rising kind of thing. Which, by the way, are you a big Springsteen guy?
I'm not a huge Springsteen guy. I'm a big Nebraska fan.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I
Nebraska rules.
I heard he's doing something with Nebraska. Like he's either he wants to bring that to Broadway or do a film based on Nebraska.
Rick, that guy never stops.
It's insane.
He never stops.
I'm a giant
That's why
Springsteen guy.
I've said he's not allowed to come on the podcast because I don't have 7 hours.
He will literally talk to you for 300 days.
He's the only person we've ever gotten actively shot down by.
Really?
Well,
of course, dude. It's fucking Bruce Springsteen.
You say that, but we've had some pretty big names. We talked Ice Cube for an hour.
Not
but
Bruce Springsteen level.
But so I reached out to Bruce, and I'm like the biggest. I'm a caricature of Philadelphia. I'm the biggest Bruce fan on earth. And so I got cocky and I emailed his agent. I think this was right after we had Ice Cube on, and I was like, "Hey, we'd love to have Bruce on if he could make time." As if like he was sitting around waiting for the phone call, and his agent actually got back to us, and he was like, "Hey, man, this looks great, but no." And I was like, "Sweet." I was like, "Cool." Which in my head I was like, "You'll see, buddy. You'll come crawling back."
You'll see. Dude,
and then
it's kind of I've heard stories about people reaching out to Sufjan Stevens' team to like. And historically, it's like the reply is like, "Thank you," but Sufjan doesn't talk to anybody.
I kind of miss those days when like that was a possibility. And I guess there are still a couple artists that can pull that off, but like in this day and age, it's like every artist is like, well, yeah, I'm a musician, but I also got a podcast and here's my TikTok videos. And like, it's become a lot harder to be the, I don't do interviews guy, because if you don't do interviews and don't do shit these days, like no one fucking sees anything.
That's so cool though. Like Sufjan Stevens just put out a new record and didn't talk to anybody. That's awesome.
I love that shit. I love it.
It's a great record, by the way. I actually really like that record.
It's great. I mean, I was talking to this with a good artist friend of mine a couple of days ago. She's around the same age. She's a little younger than me. And she just was like, it's interesting that like, yes, that artist still exists, but they didn't start in this timeline.
No,
you know what I mean? They started like Radiohead. Well, Tom York is like, I don't really want to talk to anybody for 5 years.
Yeah.
Or like do any sort of promo at all. But like, these are already established household names. And like, you're right. To be able to grow a career at this point, at this stage of the game, like I guess it took me a minute to get to that realization, because my inclination has been to like, I don't know if I really feel like talking, but then I'll get in doing an interview and I'll be like, I actually fucking love talking to people about art. I love to, and I learned that like very quickly when I started doing promo for Dying Star, and turned down some stuff. And then the moment I started doing stuff, I was like, I actually enjoy this. I enjoyed doing it. So I probably would still have done it back in the day if I had started when they started. But
Yeah, you
yeah,
see, for
man.
me, it was like I have an idea that I'd like to be one of those artists that doesn't do interviews, but then someone asks me a question, I'm like, oh, they want to listen to my thoughts on something, and it's like that ego just kicks in, and it's like that one wins every time. Like the
That
part of me
Cat
that's like,
Williams part of your brain.
remain mysterious. Don't answer your
See,
question. Then like
see,
6 hours later, I'm like, let me tell you about the snare drum we put on this track.
Johnny, what I want to do with you is I want to get you on some podcasts or something, but I want you to just do a Cat Williams kind of thing with no factual information behind you. Just being like, like you know that Brett Favre leads the Illuminati, right? Like just go in and just spit
Dude, that's
facts,
so good.
just spit facts, and then everybody's going to be writing articles like, "Can you believe that so and so eats the blood of children?" And then it's like, there's no factual information there. You just said it, but you have to wear sunglasses the entire time. Do you know what I mean?
You
Like you
have
have to be
to.
mysterious.
Sounds like you're
You have to.
describing my other podcast because
Yeah,
that's
that's actually true.
Have you been
Oh,
watching? It's only on the dark web.
no, yeah, I forgot about that. Where you wear the hood and you're just backlit and I can't see your face. That's great. But I mean, Rustin, we took up a lot of your time, and we would love to have you on. We're doing a songwriting series called The Co-Write, where we sit down and
Sick.
we break down songs from the initial demo to the final product.
Oh
But
shit.
for yours, I kind of want to do one of two options here. I want to either do that. I want you to pick out a song, and I want to do that version, or I want to come down with Kenny and Johnny, and I want to get in the studio, and I want to see if we can create a pop country song together. Like go to that
Be
space
fun as fuck.
and see if we can actually get in and make a full-on banger like Florida Georgia Line, Luke Bryan
I mean,
song.
100% that can be done.
I think we should do it.
I have 100 joke songs that sometimes we'll play live just for the shit of it, and they're all pop country. So I'm already primed.
Dude, I feel like I need to get on a side channel with you because I just moved out here with my brothers to Austin, and we've got a side project going on that I don't actually want to talk about publicly.
Oh,
That
it's so
is,
good.
it's comical. The music, I think, is really great music. Like we haven't compromised on the music. Lyrically, we're having a lot of fun. So it
Hell
sounds
yeah.
like we need to tap you for some of these hidden songs that you've got.
Dude, I'm down because it comes from like a passion of those melodies and like
Yeah.
it's just fun and it's fun to kind of like make fun of yourself
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sing. I'm
I mean,
down. I'm down for all the above. You guys just holler at me.
say no more,
I
dude.
enjoyed this highly.
When's the tour start?
Tour starts March 27th, ends May 2nd.
And it ends at the Ryman, right?
Sure does. Mother Church.
How many times have you done the Ryman?
This will be so did it once on Dying Star tour. We did 2 nights for Shape Destroy tour and did Ascend for Weakness. And then now since this is acoustic, going back to the Mother Church. So this will be number 4.
You did Ascend?
Did, yes.
Buddy, let's
It
go.
was fun as fuck. Yeah.
Dude, that's fire. Which by oh wait, hold on one sec. We didn't even bring up the Noah Kahan tour.
Oh yeah.
How was that?
That was nuts, dude. That was
I
really
mean,
nutty.
like to watch someone somehow like I mean he's not reinventing the wheel, but just to catch a moment and like completely
Yes.
take off and actually seem like a good dude. You know what I mean? He just
Oh
seems
man,
like a
he's such a
guy.
good dude.
Yeah.
He's such a good dude. I think Spin reached out to me to like they were doing a story on him and they wanted because they knew like me and him met when he was like 18. I was like 24, I think. Anyways, we were both in very confusing places. He was wearing flip-flops. I was wearing a 10-gallon cowboy hat. And we never wrote a song. We just smoked cigs and talked. And I was like, I like this dude a lot. And then, fast forward, he's on top of the world. And my point is like, so when they reached out to do an interview, when I saw the headline of the article, I was really happy to see it because it's very true. It said, it was like something like sometimes nice guys do finish first.
Mhm.
And he's super nice. He's just as like not confused, but just bewildered by the rapid rise of success as everyone else is about it. And he seems to be very grateful for it. And he's super fucking talented. So like I love seeing that happen to people like that.
I guess my last question would be even on that same note for you. Like when Dying Star did take off and then you got to live this fantasy dream of being an actual artist and making money off it and coming from where
Yeah.
you came from. Was there ever a moment where you looked around and you're like, this doesn't make any sense?
Yeah. 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 I mean, the first, like, honestly, it was that moment hit me hardest when the Shape and Destroy tour, when we put the Ryman up and it sold out in 5 minutes. And then we
Oh,
put a second one up and it sold out in a couple hours. Like I that didn't feel real. I mean, but honestly, anytime I play anywhere, whether it's for 100 people or 5,000 people, and there's words being sung back to me about these really private moments that I had that I needed to express myself, like there's this sense of like, what the fuck? And I think like measures of success ebb and flow given like what period you are in your career. You could be on top of the world and then not, and then on top of the world again, and then not, then on top of the world or somewhere in the middle or whatever. But like, I think the true measure of success for artists that really do it for the right reasons is feeling that sense of bewilderment all the time and not ever getting accustomed to it, you know?
Yeah.
realest thing.
I
That's the-
think it's there's something special about like hearing people sing back your favorite song of the moment. I know it changes as opposed to like a song that's a hit. Like,
right.
you know,
Dude,
you get to the point where you expect that, and then you play some deep song that you're like, this is my favorite song from the album, and then you hear people sing it back, and you're like, okay, that's what it's for. It's not
They
like, yeah,
got
that's
it.
the
Yeah,
shit.
exactly.
yeah, you know, like it's cool
That
to have
is,
1,000, 10,000 people sing a hit song. Awesome. Like no one's going to turn that down, but to
of
hear,
course.
500 people sing this tiny song is awesome.
Oh yeah, dude, to be able to have a career so far, where like I've had a couple songs that did okay on radio and they're like the obvious go-tos and they bring people to the show. But like to be able to make a set list for a show that's whatever I want it to be,
Hmm.
and like I can encore with whatever I want it to be and I can close the show with whatever I want it to be,
Yeah.
is a dream come true. So like that is the measure of success. To continue doing that, sure, sell more tickets, play bigger venues. That's great. I love that. Those
Yeah.
are things that artists can have aspirational reachings for. But the main thing to stay is to be able to have that set list be whatever you want it to be. And that comes from just making honest music, I feel.
That's
Dude,
such a great way to put it. Yeah.
just as a fan, man, I just want to say, like, I love this. I can't wait to do more, but more than anything, I'm just like, I've been following for a while, and I'm like proud to watch what you've done. It's awesome.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the ask. And also, like, this was a fantastic conversation. This
You,
doesn't always happen when we get down to like promoting something or talking about
yeah.
something with my career. I appreciate it quite a bit.
I mean, dude, we tried to get you on when you had nothing. Like, there wasn't anything to promote. I was just like, I think
Yeah, yeah.
you might have followed us on Instagram. I think I tagged you in something on Instagram, like in the story, and you followed us. And my instant reaction was like, "Oh my god, yes!" And I DM'd you. I was like, "Let's get you on, bro." And
I'm down.
your seat's always open, bro.
Thank you very much, man. Well, I'm down to do the other stuff you talk about. Just holler at me.
Say no more.
Awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ruston Kelly. Ruston, we'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right.
Great to
Peace,
meet
y'all.
you, man. See ya.
You too.
Thanks for putting up with my baby.
Dude, I love it. I love it.
Dude, I promised my wife I would stop putting him on camera. What do you want me to do? I can't
He's
do
a
anything about
star.
it.
He's a
He's a
star.
monster, bro. All right, bro. Take it easy. We'll talk to you soon. All right.
All right. Peace.
See you, buddy.